When she used to work as manager at a comic store, my partner asked people one day what their least favorite creature type in Magic was. Some people said dragons, a lot of people said slivers. The other manager, Cole, said humans. Why humans? Well, because humans could be tacked on to anything. You had human wizards, human clerics, human soldiers, human warriors. Tons and tons of different types of humans. And since we ourselves are humans, it's an incredibly common creature type in Magic. With that said, Humans is a deck in Modern that utilizes human synergies to play a disruptive game and eventually win with a big board. It's an archetype that seemingly came out of nowhere with the printing of 2 cards in one set. And at one time, Humans was one of the top decks in Modern, but nowadays, you'd be lucky to find it at a local F&M. So, what happened? Why did Modern's premier nonlinear deck just fall off the map? Why does no one play Humans?
All of my humans will attack, and that is it. Colin Smullen is going to win this game and match. 2-0 over Scott Simmons.
A little bit overkill, but just to be safe. And might as well swing in with everyone. Opponent chump blocks, goes to 2, pass back, and there's the win.
If you watch some of my games, there's some games where I'm like, okay, Thalia, Kitesail Freebooter, Meddling Mage you, and there's other games where I'm like, Champion, Thalia, Thalia's Lieutenant, Phantasmal Image, card my Thalia's Lieutenant, casting Malcontents, kill you.
This video topic was chosen by some of the fans in the comments section, so if you want to suggest a video topic to talk about, or just want to keep up to date on new videos, be sure to subscribe and tell me what you want to see in the comments below. To start, let's take a look at a modern day Humans deck list. You'll be shocked to hear it's almost all creatures. Let's start with the classics. Thalia's Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish are the 2 best payoffs for the archetype. Champion of the Parish is a strong 1-drop that can grow for each human played, and Lieutenant not only gets big on its own, but also effectively lords all your humans by putting counters on them when it enters. Meddling Mage, Kitesail Larcenist, Jarina Dauntless General, and Ranger Captain of Eos back up our threats with Disruption. Meddling Mage can shut off any non-land card from being played, Kitesail Larcenist can shut off an artifact or creature by turning it into a treasure, Jarina exiles graveyards and can sacrifice itself to protect the board, and Ranger Captain searches for a 1-drop when it enters and can then be an instant speed non-creature's silence. Speaking of 1-drops, Guide of Souls, Mockingbird, Sylvan Safekeeper, and Norin the Wary are the remainder of them. Guide of Souls is incredibly powerful on its own, but also happens to be a human, so it goes in the list. Mockingbird is a 1-drop in name, but can come in as any creature on the battlefield with flying. Sylvan Safekeeper offers the deck strong protection. Since your curve ends at 3, you don't need that many lands, and Norin the Wary flickers when anything happens. Great alongside Champion and Lieutenant, but also terrific with Satoru the Infiltrator, turning Norin into card advantage. Rounding out our non-lands, we have 4 Aether Vials, allowing the deck to get around mana constraints and counter magic while also triggering Satoru for more draws. In the lands, we mainly have ones that tap to cast creatures or colorless for Vial. I want to real quick draw attention to Unclaimed Territory. This card filling the missing piece for 5-color creature mana bases alongside Kitesail Freebooter were the 2 cards printed that put humans on the map in Modern. Not only did humans have the extra 4 copies of a land they desperately needed, but Kitesail Freebooter ripped a non-creature non-land out of your opponent's hand and had solid stats as a 2-mana flyer that could be buffed by Lieutenant. But despite me talking up Kitesail Freebooter, you may notice that it and a lot of other old human cards aren't in this list. Their loss, and humans' loss as a whole, is due to shifts in the modern meta. 2-mana creatures that stopped your opponent's plays used to be incredible. A 2/2 for 2 that said your opponent can't play a certain card. Thalia making everything more expensive, and as mentioned, Kitesail Freebooter ripping a card was the boon the deck needed. At this time in Modern, decks weren't running a ton of different removal spells, instead opting for 1 or 2 of the best at 4 copies. This allowed the deck to name and rip removal spells to keep the board safe, and multiple Meddling Mages could completely cut off a deck's ability to use removal. Plus, it also gave you the ability to shut off your opponent's best card, a board wipe, or just make a combo deck completely unable to win. And at this time in Modern, there was one combo deck that was great into other matchups, but really struggled against humans. Storm. As you can probably imagine, a combo deck that relies on 2 cards as their win cons really doesn't appreciate it when they're shut off. On top of this, Thalia made Storm attempts much harder without cheapeners like Baral and Electromancer, and Kitesail did Kitesail things, ripping key cards out of the hand. Even as Storm became less prevalent and fell out of the meta, humans still continued to be a top option, as the deck had literally every human and changeling ever printed to choose from. Sometimes they would use non-human creatures to fill certain holes, like Deputy of Detention, but this core of disruptive creatures was the real strength of humans. But now, things have changed, and only Meddling Mage remains from that original core of disruptive cards. While non-creature spells are still strong, a lot of power in Modern has consolidated into its creatures, making Kitesail Freebooter and Thalia a lot worse. The biggest weakness of Thalia is 1 mana removal, as paying 2 mana to remove it is a great rate, all things considered. And we're seeing a ton of 1 mana removal in Modern currently. Lightning Bolt, Fatal Push, Galvanic Discharge, Static Prison, Spell Snare for most of the deck, Solitude is free and a creature, Prismatic Ending even gets around Thalia's tax. And with all the power consolidating into creatures, Thalia's tax doesn't do anything to slow down your opponent's best threats. The multiple different types of good removal hurts Meddling Mage too, as suddenly there's a lot more cards you have to name to ensure your humans don't get destroyed. But despite these more varied removal suites, Meddling Mage is still a 4 of in humans lists today. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, sure, it's not great against creature matchups, but what about combo? There are 2 combo decks in Modern right now. One of them is even Storm. But this version of Storm is a lot different than the Storm that humans used to prey on. You can't just name Grapeshot and empty the Warrens anymore. The deck utilizes a literal wish board, with 3 copies of Wish to find a wide array of toolbox cards to handle different situations. Okay, so name Grapeshot and Wish. Sure, but Ral Monsoon Mage is a card that'll flip into its Planeswalker side and downtick to blow up the Meddling Mage. Okay, so name Grapeshot, Wish, and Ral. Ral is a turn 2 play. Hopefully, you have the Meddling Mages and Aether Vial to both Meddling Mage naming Ral and Meddling Mage naming Wish before your opponent starts going off. At that point, you're asking for a lot when your Storm opponent is asking for just a little. Okay, so maybe Storm's a bust, but what about the other combo deck, Belcher? Well, it turns out there's enough blue modal dual face cards now for Belcher to go from a glass cannon deck to an incredibly interactive deck. What do you even name with Meddling Mage? Well, naming Sink into Stupor and Char Belcher is a good way to stop them from removing Mage and stop their win con, but the deck has gone from oops all spells to oops all counter spells. Good luck trying to land a Meddling Mage at the right time. The old disruption package of humans has been laid off, and Meddling Mage is the only card good enough to survive and keep its job in the deck. But despite the supposed versatility and disruptiveness of humans, the way the deck is built causes another massive restriction. Why was Unclaimed Territory such a big card for humans? Because to support a greedy 5-color mana base, you need as many lands as possible that can tap for any color. Alongside Ancient Ziggurat and Cavern of Souls, Unclaimed Territory finally gave it the mana base it needed. But this mana base has a pretty serious cost. You really can't play any non-creature spells other than Aether Vial, which is so important to the deck's strategy that it's worth it. But any non-creature spell that isn't exactly a single colorless becomes basically impossible to play, because most of your lands, if not used on a creature, tap for colorless. So the deck loses out on some of the best removal and interaction in the game. Kitesail Larcenist is cool, but 3 mana removal is pretty rough when compared to the plethora of 1 mana removal. There's also the creature restriction. We need to ideally be playing all humans. Any non-humans, whether in the main deck or sideboard, makes it harder to trigger the payoffs. But are the payoffs worth it anymore? Is the juice still worth the squeeze? The payoff for running all humans in an incredibly restrictive mana base is Champion of the Parish getting really big, Thalia's Lieutenant getting big and making your board bigger, and Jarina being able to completely protect your field. Unfortunately, this just isn't good enough in the current modern metagame. Big creatures don't just auto-win you games. Big creatures with good effects win you games. The power level in Modern has moved away from favoring tight synergy and towards individual power. Flage is going to eat a human's board alive. Both combo decks in the format can fight through it. Domain is just gonna slam 5/5s for 2 mana and deal 5 damage with 2 mana sorceries. Orcish Bowmasters can blow out the Satoru engine and any 1 toughness creature. Ajani creates chump blockers, consistent damage, and a pseudo board wipe. Abhorrent Oculus is a 5/5 flyer that creates blockers. Frog is almost impossible for humans to get rid of. Hilariously, one of the best creatures in the deck isn't even a human. It's Mockingbird, because it can copy your opponent's threat. And yeah, you have Guide of Souls, but I think we can all agree that it's not a humans card. And yes, humans technically does have answers to all of these, but if you start running cards that tech for certain matchups in humans, you're going to immediately lose points against other matchups, whereas other decks in the format have cards that are good in multiple matchups. Humans, after laying off its previous disruption package, replaced those cards with low-paid interns who can't do the job as well, stretch the deck too thin, and make the deck utterly fail as a disruptive anti-meta choice. Humans, at one point, was the top-tier deck of Modern. The printings of Unclaimed Territory and Kitesail Freebooter propelled the deck into Tier 1 excellence. As Modern moved on, the decks that humans preyed on either disappeared from the meta or changed into something much harder to deal with. Synergy became less and less important, and payoffs at the cost of serious deck building restrictions became a thing of the past. And with new talent coming into the meta, the breakout deck of old was thrown to the curb. Unemployed, unwanted, unplayable.